You know, I look at this amendment, and very much like my colleague Pat Fallon from Texas, I think to myself, what is it exactly that we're asking for here? A report. A report to actually understand what has DEI actually done for our armed forces. And when I look at this, I identify a couple of things, having served in the military for a long time, but also serving in government as a whole, to where I spent 7 years of my life in Iraq, 3 years of my life in Afghanistan, Kosovo, Pakistan, northern Somalia, was blown up twice in '06. I can tell you that not a single person that I served with, whether it was Michael Johnson, who is from Bushwick and who is a black male, or whether it was our friend, Alfredo Perez from Puerto Rico, or whether it was others who was from Cambodia who lived out in San Francisco, or otherwise, did we care what we looked like? Nor did our enemies. Those bullets, those bombs, none of them cared what color you were, what race you identify with, and that's the difference here. It's a big difference when we talk about inclusion versus division, equity versus equality, identity as opposed to meritocracy. We are about strengthening our forces. And if you walk out to Arlington Cemetery right now, where I have people that I served with buried, and you don't know the person who's actually in that grave, and all you see is a name, you couldn't tell me the color of skin of that individual who has served our armed forces and died for our armed forces. As far as I'm concerned, I look at the numbers. I look at our recruitment, and very much what General Bergman has said through his 40-plus years, it is about recruitment, retention, and readiness. We don't need to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. It needs to be increased lethality, readiness, and being properly prepared. Because our adversaries are spending 0 hours when it comes to China and Russia thinking about these things. And all we're asking for is a report to understand how this has helped. Because I can tell you that if you look at some of the DEI resources, here's one of the websites that includes reading that says, when white bodies say, tell me what to do, it states, if you have a white body and you've just begun to recognize how white body supremacy affects the world and harms you, here are some ways to sink your toes into somatic abolitionism. Does that sow inclusion or division? And I think that when we look at our numbers at 25,000 in deficit and 8,600 if you add into those who were purged out of the COVID, you're talking about 3 Army divisions that were short in our recruitment efforts. That tells me that DEI is not only not working, but it's actually impacting and negatively to our recruitment and retention capabilities. So I think a report to understand this should be welcomed, as well as for how money is being spent, which is our job as stewards of taxpayers' funding. With that, I yield back.